we are particularly focused on people. So the reforms are people-centric. And you see that all over the reform, the new tax reform laws. The reforms are focused on growth as well as efficiency. The priority of the reforms is not to generate more revenue. We believe that more revenue will come naturally as a result of a growing economy, as a result of an economy that is driven by efficiency, as a result of an economy where the people are enabled to create value and become more productive. It's a natural law that when the economy works and people prosper and firms make profits, government will collect more taxes.
If there is any area of human activity that most highly connects the government and the governed, the leaders and the led, it is taxation. It is said that there is no taxation without representation. It has also been said that only two things are certain in life, death and taxes. It is also generally acknowledged that taxes are the oxygen for development of communities and nations. And so, where taxes and taxation are mentioned, emotions run high, interest is generated, controversies arise, and of course, consensus is reached. The Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms has gone about its work in the last 2 years, guided on this truism. It has engaged with the tax-paying public and indeed the general public all the way. Even now that new tax acts have emerged, the committee has continued to consult and clarify issues with the public. On Friday, the 3rd of October 2025, the committee hosted an interactive session on the new tax acts in Lagos, which had in attendance journalists, influencers, and public analysts. And just a week after, Friday, the 10th of October, the train moved to Abuja, where the committee honored the invitation of civil society organizations to a dialogue session to further explain the ingredients of the new tax reform acts.
We have civil society organizations in the room. We have community-based organizations, faith-based organizations. We have trade union. I can see Nigeria Labour Congress. We have members of the Tax Justice and Governance Platform in the room. This event is actually being supported in collaboration with the International Budget Partnership, who is also a member of the Steering Committee of the Tax Justice and Governance Platform.
Yinka Babalola is the country director at International Budget Partnership in Nigeria.
I'm very pleased to welcome you to this interactive session between civil society representatives and the Presidential Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms Committee. In democratic systems, government officials are elected to serve the people. They are not to place themselves above the people, should have a keen interest in getting continuous feedback on how policies are affecting the people, and to use that information to refine those policies until the desired outcomes are obtained. We don't see enough of this in Nigeria, but this is an area where the Presidential Committee on Tax Reforms and Fiscal Policy distinguishes itself. Nigeria is undergoing a transformative and comprehensive reform of its tax policies, its systems, and administrative structures, and the committee has constantly sought and applied feedback from all stakeholders and demonstrated interest in working with civil society to develop frameworks and systems for monitoring implementation, progress, and impact. We commend the chairperson for creating this space, and I trust that he and the committee members will remain open to receive both positive and negative feedback on how the reforms affect Nigerians, especially the most marginalized. I use the phrase negative feedback intentionally. In my previous life, I was an engineer, so systems are very important. And any student of systems know that sometimes negative feedback is required to restore stability or equilibrium. I know that the chairperson and the committee members are broad-minded enough not to take any feedback received as a critique of their persons, but a desire to ensure the reforms work for all. As we go into this interactive session, I enjoin all community and civil society representatives present in the room or online to take full advantage of this session to ask critical questions about the implications of the tax reforms, to bring feedback from the communities they represent on aspects of the reforms that could be improved, amended, or even eliminated. So be courageous, ask your questions, share your feedback. It is also an opportunity to clear any misconceptions. This session is another opportunity for us to connect citizens to the government on critical policy issues, in this case, tax reforms, and I ask that we maximize the opportunity that we have been given.
Immediately after Mrs. Yinka Babalola's speech was the address of Mr. Taiwo Oyedele, Chairman Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms. Mr. Oyedele's presentation was essentially the same as in his presentation in Lagos just a week before. He explained provisions of the new tax acts, addressed inaccuracies, and corrected misconceptions, allayed fears, and restored hope. We will therefore essentially devote this outing to the question and answer session at the event.
So what do we expect from all of these reforms as I wrap up? We expect that businesses will benefit, small, large, multinationals, anybody doing anything legitimate, anything that is legitimate that you do. This reform would enable you, it will enhance what you're doing, it will make life easier for you. Households, families, individuals will find these reforms beneficial. They will get to keep more of the income that they make. They'll find the basic things they buy more affordable, and they'll find the opportunity to create wealth under the new laws. So from January, we expect two things to happen. Low-income earners, middle-income earners will see higher take-home pay because their PAYE will drop. These same people will see a drop in the price of the basic things they consume.
It was a very well-attended event.
So we had over 344 registrations, and each person had an obligation to, or a space to ask questions through the online portal. I'm sure that a lot of the things that came in from those online questions have been addressed already. Yes, he was very careful and meticulous about taking them line after the other. But maybe one or two areas that we need to call his attention to while we move on to the Q&A session. So permit me to invite the Program Coordinator of Tax Equity Projects at International Budget Partnership, Mrs. Chika Oko, to come take up this next session.
The ensuing interactive session was a very productive one, as you can see from this presentation from Mrs. Chika Oko, Programs Coordinator, Tax Equity Projects at International Budget Partnership.
So this is going to be very quick. We just want to acknowledge the fact that registered participants for this event asked key questions, and we just want to acknowledge that the chairman has already responded to a good number of them, but we just want to highlight very few ones. Okay, so we had, like Chinedu mentioned, about 344 participants registered for this event, and we also had participants from civil society, which represents about 33% of all the registered organizations, professional bodies 25%, and then we had community-based organizations, foundations, religious groups, social movements, and others, a whole lot of other groups. and that other took about 30%. We asked a question about whether people have read any part of the Act, and 87% said yes. So can we clap for ourselves? Yeah. So that showed that we're actually interested in the new tax reforms. I've not seen this kind of momentum in Nigeria before, where everybody is talking about this tax act and how it's going to affect their lives. Okay, so that's highly commendable for Nigerians. And we had another question about how they will rate their understanding of the key provisions of the Act. And yeah, it was also positive. We had a lot of highs on personal income tax, company income tax, and also the VAT. But we also had a good level of lows in those areas as well. For instance, we had about 16% saying no or very poor or poor understanding of company income tax. The same thing for the VAT, about 15% as well. Incentives was quite a bit high. So we had 26% of persons having either poor or very low understanding of incentives. The same thing for exemptions. So these are areas that need to be paid attention to. And then we asked a question about what would you like the chairman or the presidential committee to pay attention to in this conversation. So top priority issues for people was personal income tax. I think that's why the chairman really paid very close attention to that here. Then there is also the SME threshold, VAT, and this is in order of how they were all prioritized. Then NGO treatment. So people were asking questions about how does this apply to NGOs, given the kind of work that they do, are there exemptions or reliefs? There's also a question about what about cross-border, when you move funding cross-border, what does that mean for NGOs? Then there are questions around implementation timeline. So for implementation timeline, there were, suggestions about, okay, do we have this implementation broken down into like quick wins? Are there, what does it look like for full implementation? And is it possible to delay implementation up to half year next year? Okay, then for SME threshold, there was this confusion about whether the threshold is 50 million or 100 million, and there was a request to really, that there's need to clarify that. Then there were questions around how were these thresholds actually determined, and I think the chairman has tried to respond to that, but it would also be nice to look into it again. Then for VAT, we had people asking about how whether VAT will it worsen inflation, and how will the new tax act ensure that it does not. Okay, then there were also concerns about the rural informal traders. What's the implication of the reforms for them, especially when you look at the theme, how will the reforms consider the specific issues and needs of this particular group? Then for tax administration and harmonization, there were key questions about uniform framework across federal, state, and local levels. Is there provision for such? And whether consumption tax will still continue, like you have that going on in some states. So what's the plan for ensuring uniform implementation across the federation? Transparency and accountability and trust were also mentioned quite a lot. And questions were about, okay, how are we going to ensure transparent use of taxes collected? And will it be possible to publish a manifesto on revenue spending? So this is a critical question that we want to highlight. Then on withholding tax, there was a question about the withholding tax rate for freelancers who are earning small amounts. What does the law say about them? And then, of course, that question about TIN and whether it is going to discourage poor people from banking. So these are key concerns that we are raised. We had close to 300 questions or more from people, and what we plan to do is to put this together and share with the Presidential Committee so they can look at all of them a little bit more closely. Maybe frequently an FAQ can come out from that question and be the way forward for how people can get more answers to their questions. We also have questions that are coming in online, and the session moderator will be able to read all of that. Thank you very much.
There is more.
The question online said, could I suggest the committee works with state governments, local governments, and universities so that those who have graduated in courses relevant to accounting and auditing can be tapped to build their capacity to pass in this wealth of information into the population, so that in the short and long terms, these become entrenched within our systems. That's one. The second one, how will the old TIN be merged with the new tax number? What happens to the previously paid tax with the old TIN? Sorry. Mr. Olawale Salami asked, how would business preempt what the turnover would be by the year end so they can stop charging or charge VAT? So I think the person is talking about, okay, how do I know whether I should start charging or not charge VAT? From Mr. Victor Arokoyo, he said, in the midst of the going into the new tax law, FCT IRS is already asking taxpayers to have another TIN unique to the FCT IRS. How do we explain this in view of the plan to harmonize the tax ID identification number process? So these are the questions we have online. Then I would give opportunity for the in-person participants to please try, and if you can, we have appreciated the chairman. Just go ahead and ask the questions straight to the point. Don't explain too much so that we can finish on time. Number one, please.
I have 3 questions. The first question is, the fuel subsidy was removed, and which led to this rocket of a lot of things. I need a proper justification for the reintroduction of the 5% surcharge. Because if the fuel subsidy is removed, there is increase in price, and another surcharge is there will be increase in price. The second question is, those who don't pay taxes, those that are below the threshold of paying taxes, will the government issue them a TCC exemption? Because a lot of government agencies are requesting for tax TCC for individuals. Will they be issued like an exempt certificate or something like that? Then the next question is, there has been this debate about people should upgrade their businesses from business name to company, because as a business name you are being treated as you'll be charged personal income tax. Why as a company, there are certain thresholds that will be looked at before.
Yes. I was at NCC 2 weeks ago for a program organized by Nigerian Computer Society. I'm a member, and a NITDA representative came up and was telling us that by January next year, we are not going to benefit things like this because the 1% they are benefiting will be cut off. So I don't know how you explain this to us. Thank you.
I want to ask leadership by example. If the top government officials, starting from Mr. President, will be paying tax, are they included?
Mr. Chairman, sir, my question is, within the law, do we have any framework that work closely with Office of Auditor General for the Federation to audit the income as well as expenditure? Because if you notice, the latest audit report from that office should be 2022, and we are in 2025. So if we want to encourage Nigerians to be paying, as at when due, how do we audit that process? Thank you, sir.
I have just two simple questions. The freelancer that are working for NGO, are we to treat their invoice like that of a professional? They are actually graduates, but are we going to equate them when it comes to the issue of withholding tax as professionals? Then, first, we are being asked to self-charge ourselves. So as an NGO, after self-charging ourselves with parts, at the end of the day, are we to collect it back? Are we among the people that can recover all these parts that have been paid?
I just have two straight questions. One is, if a company pays tax, company tax, are they subject to any other states or local government tax laws? Secondly, listening to you, I see a very good reform. However, I've interacted with friends who are concerned, actually, and are looking for a way to evade tax, probably because of issue of accountability, which somebody have raised. Are there ways that the government is going to look at fiscal responsibility on the part of our leaders in spending this money as they generate it? Thank you.
Mr. Oyedele responded.
The first one is, are we working with the states and educational institutions for better understanding? The answer is yes. So we're working with the states, we're working with universities, we're working with professional institutions. In fact, Mr. President was saying to us that why don't we even have some level of tax education across all the curriculum from elementary? So it might just be elementary is you should pay tax and it's your right to be served and stuff like that. So that work is ongoing. So the answer is yes. The second one is, how will the old thing be merged with the new one? You don't need to worry about it. Remember, there's a time we used to have bank accounts that did not resemble themselves. So when they moved to BVN, you didn't have to do anything. So they just tell you your new bank account is this, right? So you'll be told. But a lady, when we had a session with with journalists and influencers in Lagos, so a lady said LRS sent her a note to say, this is your new number, don't use the other, because already LRS is ahead of many of the states. So don't worry about the harmonization, it will be done and you'll be informed. How do we preempt that our turnover will be under exemption threshold? Excellent question. So the way the law has been drafted is this thing looks back. So by the time you enter 2026, you ask yourself, what was my turnover in 2025? If 2025 was less than 100 million, you would assume that 2026 will be around that range, except you have reasons to believe otherwise. For example, I am an event MC. So I go and talk, they pay me. Last year I made 40 million. 2026 I already signed with 10 states. I will hit 150. If you already know, don't exempt yourself. If you don't know, and you're just doing your thing, and you go to April, and you say, the rate at which I'm going, I'll cross 100 million, you start charging VAT. In other words, the law places the responsibility on you. If you pretend, circumstances may suggest that you are not being honest. So you see those language are there. Start with last year, and then modify it with any valid expectation that you may have. It could even be that you made 150 million in 2025. And before the end of 2025, they cancel your major contract that was 80 million. Next year, don't charge VAT. Okay? Whatever it is, you know more than anybody else what your turnover will likely be. FCTRS is asking for another thing. What does that mean? So my guess, although I'll find out from them, is maybe they're already giving you the new one. Yes. So that's what somebody told me from Lagos. Otherwise, there's no reason why they ask you for a new one when we're already doing reform. But if I find out and it's because the head of the FCTRS is on our committee, so they won't be doing anything contrary to the reform. Our system is decentralized. Thank you for raising that point, because I saw somebody online who says, hey, all the Internal Revenue Service, everything will be collected by NRS. That is not true. Our reform says Nigeria Revenue Service will collect revenue belonging to the Federation, so that is petroleum profit tax, company income tax, all these things that they share. And they will collect money for the federal government. Then the state internal revenue service of a state will collect all the taxes and levies for that state. There's a state where they have 12 revenue agencies. So what is happening at the national level is also happening at states. So we're trying to consolidate for everybody. Now, the Nigerian Revenue Service will now connect with all the state internal revenue service to form a, should I call it, a whole for Nigeria, where there is order, where there is harmonization, where there is consistency. So that's what we're doing. That's why we have the Joint Revenue Board under the new law, where they will now connect.
Before going further, Mr. Oyedele made this profound statement.
By the way, this reform benefits the states relatively more than the federal government. At a point, Mr. President was wondering, I set you up, but one day when I went to see him, he said, I hope you are not asking me to shed more weight. Because they give 1/3 of your VAT revenue to state. They agreed. Electronic money transfer, we said, stop sharing it with state. It belongs to state. They agreed. We came back and said, this exemption for government bond, why don't you give for state? They agreed. The things we have given to state, that's why I was a little bit surprised myself when they were fighting the reform. I said, if only you know. It feels like you're the one that set up the committee. And that's because we're not doing them any favor. We just believe in proper fiscal federalism, where the units make the whole, and you need to empower them.
More answers.
Then the next one is, how does the reform address inflation and all of that? So the reform by design is meant to make costs come down, and I've explained many of them. Either something is zero rated, or the producer is getting input credits. Those ones are there already. So there's nothing in the tax reform law that will make prices go up. There are things designed to make costs come down. So pay attention to the difference. There's nothing that will make prices go up. There are things that will make costs come down. When costs come down, there's an expectation that prices will come down, but it's not a guarantee. Because the person that is doing the business can keep all the gains to themselves, but they have no excuse to now increase price. They may choose not to reduce price, but they can't increase it, okay? Then on top of that, one of the biggest impacts for inflation in Nigeria is the haulage levies. So they are bringing yam from north to south. Those guys said their budget is 500 to 700,000 per trip. Yam will be expensive in the city now, isn't it? So this is part of what we are working on, to outlaw those things completely. We think that local government can collect only one tax and collect 10 times what they are collecting now, not standing on the road. So that one is in progress because it's in the constitution and we can't do it by the law.
On the controversial fuel surcharge.
My friend says he needs a justification for the introduction of the 5% surcharge. So, number 1 point, the 5% surcharge had been introduced since 2007 under the FEMA Act. In fact, FEMA came to us and said now that subsidy has been removed, they want to start collecting their surcharge. Because when the subsidy was there, if they put the surcharge, it's government that will pay it. So So it was not making sense. Now they said they want to collect the structure so they can be fixing road. The law says 40% is for FEMA, federal roads, 60% for state roads. We now said to them that under our reform, you cannot be collecting taxes, you're not a revenue agency. The lawmakers looked at it and said, this thing is still useful. Put it in the new tax law. Take it away from FEMA. But make sure that it does not commence spontaneously, without people being prepared for it, without the time being right. So the lawmakers put a language that says, even though this tax law will commence in January, this surcharge must not commence automatically with the tax law. It can only commence when there is an order issued by the minister that is published in the Gazette, so that it's not hidden. So that provision is there. In principle, it may not commence in 20 years' time. It may also commence in January. Right, but what I'm saying is that let's just focus on the principle of it. The principle of it is, does it make sense to have dedicated revenue for fixing road? The answer is yes. It is done all over the world. Are roads bad in Nigeria? Very, very bad. Should government use subsidy money to fix road? Yes. Would it be enough? No. The entire revenue of the government across all levels, if you dedicate it to transport infrastructure in Nigeria, it will not be enough. The decay is unbelievable. The kilometers of road in Nigeria is around 200,000. The ones that are paved are under 65,000. Half of them are not motorable. If Nigeria just start fixing roads, access road from farm to markets, rural areas, roads connecting cities and states, inner road. If we have $10 billion every year without corruption, it will still not be enough. So if we have any creative way that we can raise more revenue without creating inflation for the people, it is a good thing. And that's what that provision in the new law, that's what it is. My view is that we should focus our energy in, when we start collecting it, collect it in a way that it does not add to inflation, number one. Number two, every ₦1 you collect, let it go into fixing roads. That way, all of us will benefit. The next one is, will government give tax clearance certificate to people that we are exempting? Excellent question, because they'll still say, bring TCs to do this. Yes. What we are planning to do is, and it's even in the law, if you have no tax to pay, you must still file returns. Because otherwise, we will not know. If you haven't filed returns, we will not know whether it's because you are exempt or because you have refused to file. Once you file, my income is this, my tax is 0, you are entitled to a tax clearance certificate that says your name, says you have not paid tax because no tax is due, and you are good to go. Number 2 point, we used to need tax clearance certificate for all manners of things, a long list. Under the new law, we have removed the requirement for companies. No company needs tax clearance certificates anymore. Let them just do their business. Because some of it is, you want to get a new contract. They say, go and find TCC. They stop you from getting the contract. Now, you can't do the work. You cannot pay tax, isn't it? Even if you are somebody that has never paid tax before, I'll let you find new business. So that the day I find you, there's tax to pay, isn't it? We wanted to remove tax clearance certificate for individuals. It was a tug of war. The tax people did not agree with us. After going back and forth, we reached a compromise. The compromise was, you have this long list of things you want TCC for. Can you please tell us what is the top 3 items that generate revenue for you? So we came out, it later became 4, so you find 4 in the law now. something like you are getting government contracts, you are buying land, and two others I can't remember. So in most cases, you will not need tax clearance certificates. In instances that you need it, if you have filed returns even without paying tax, you get the certificate. If you haven't filed returns and you are doing this forward transaction, you to go and collect tax clearance certificate, that is a bit of responsibility on the individual. We are planning one for the informal sector. We have categorized informal sector into nano, micro, and small. Some businesses are so small, you don't need data to know that they are poor. If I'm roasting corn by the roadside, it does. If you have customers line up from when you start in the morning till when you close at night, you are still a poor person because the nature of that business cannot make a lot of money. Vulcanizer, cart pusher, carrying loads everywhere, sweating. How can they make money? So we've listed those kind of transactional and businesses because we don't want to leave it to the judgment of the officer. And what we plan to do is to give them tax exemption sticker. They will have the sticker, so nobody will ask them anything. The people that are above that level are the micro and small. They will pay a small percentage of their turnover. We're looking at either 0.5% or 1%. So that work is still in progress. And we're working with the Joint Revenue Board on this. So we are mindful that, indeed, if you don't find practical ways, you will exempt them, but they'll still be paying tax. Then, business name versus corporate. If you operate as a business name or no name at all, you'll still be treated as an individual. This is our 100 million turnover at 0% will not apply to you. But exemption from VAT will apply to you, even though you are not a company. If your business makes less than 100 million a year, you will need to charge VAT. The reason is because the new laws, when it comes to VAT, it covers everyone. When it comes to company income tax, it covers only companies. When it comes to personal income tax, it covers individuals. So if I run my business as an enterprise, or my name, or no name, I'll be treated as an individual for income tax purposes. I will not enjoy the 100 million, but I will enjoy the 800,000, 0%, right? When it comes to VAT, the VAT part of the new law does not make a distinction between you are a company or you are not a company. It's just interested in you are a business and you make less than 100 million, don't charge VAT. So you benefit from that one. Withholding tax, no distinction between you are a company or you are not a company. In a nutshell, the only distinction between a small business that is a company and a small business that is not a company is the CIT at 0%.
In a groundbreaking move, the reforms and the resultant tax acts have put an end to the XY mirrors of AMYMAT taxes, education tax, NIDA levy, NASENI levy, police trust fund, and more. In the new dispensation taking effect from 1st of January 2026, a development levy of 4% is now charged on the profits of companies to be shared amongst the beneficiaries of the repealed taxes.
NIDA, 1%. What happened to it? So everybody was introducing new taxes on businesses. We started with education tax, NASENI, NIDA, and there was police tax at some point. Everybody thinks that their 1% is okay. They are not thinking about the person that is paying it. We keep accumulating these things on businesses. So much so that Nigeria became top 10 in the world for the highest tax burden on businesses. A country that wants to grow does not do that. We thought about the way to solve. By the way, when we started my committee's work, we went through about 250 bills at different stages in the 9th National Assembly. 40 of them had one tax or the other at different stages. Even with this, our new reform, 2 bills went to Mr. President last week. I was so happy when I read the reports. Those 2 bills have new taxes. One is setting up agency for transportation or something. I think transport institution, 1%. Mr. President declined assent to both because of that. I was happy, but then I got worried. I said, all these things we have been saying, is it that some people are not aware? They still drafted a bill, it passed all the stages, and it has new taxes inside. It will get to a point the taxes will be more than 100% of the profit. Everybody will just sit down and be praying to God for daily meal. So what we did was to say, companies will pay only one tax apart from their CIT on their profit. It's called development levy. We now took that development levy and start sharing it to agencies. NIDA is one of them that will share. TET Fund will share. NASENI will share. So that let the fight be how to get on that list. Let not be that the fight is to keep adding to the body of businesses. So while NASENI and NIDA will not collect what they were collecting before, they will share from the larger pots that we have created in the interest of the country. Any transition arrangement for businesses to adapt, that's what we're doing. We've been working with the private sector. The organized private sector is represented on our committee, whether it's NECA, manufacturer, chambers of commerce, different sectors. So that transition arrangement is ongoing, and we'll be doing a lot of regulations and guidelines in the coming months. Then municipal money that we mentioned, is there anything like that to enhance accountability? Yes. We are working with the National Assembly as well as the Budget and Planning Office on these are local government autonomy. We hope, although we don't have legal powers to mandate it, we wish we can amend the Constitution to say they must do this as well. Because while they were given their autonomy, their staff came and said, don't pay our money to local government because they won't pay our salaries. Just imagine, staff of local government, teachers and health workers, they said, if you pay our salary to local government, you answer voicemail. So it was another headache to say, how do you give autonomy and you don't give all the money to them? We have these challenges, we can't run away from them. There are local government where they come to the office to share FAQ and disappear until the next one. On paper, it's very nice to say empower local government that are the closest to the people. If you don't put the governance in place, it's just another bottomless pit. Are the people at the top going to be paying tax and comply with this tax reform, including Mr. President? I like that. It was in one of our finance acts in the past few years that we removed the exemption for president and governor and their deputies. It used to be there in the law that they were exempted. We managed to remove it. Even us, we were surprised that it went through, I think because we already did not even care whether you are imposing tax or not. Because for him, ask him to pay tax, he will pay. Anyway, we got that into the law because our law should not be about individuals, right? So today, we've strengthened those provisions in the law. Everybody, including the president, must comply. It is not me to go and ask Mr. President and say, Mr. President, have you complied? Right? The day you make me the head of revenue agency, I will ask him. I will ask anybody, if you like, have 3 heads. But my role now is not to go be finding from people. Even my role is not even to come and find out from you whether you pay tax. Right? The people who have that role, we are working with them and creating a system. We call it system validation. If you under-declare or you don't declare, that system will throw you out. It will flag you. You will receive a lot of audit letters. We call it risk-based audit. Instead of chasing people around, no. The system will tell you the person to go and chase. That's the new system, and it does not respect whether you are the president or not. The next one says, The Office of the Auditor General. What are we doing? You know, I told you we have the aspect of our work to do with spending, with public finance management, efficiency, but we're not saying those things out. Otherwise, we will create problems for the reform when you start calling out people that need to sign your laws. So I can tell you we are working on that, working with Auditor General, Account General, Budget Office. We are working with all the institutions, including Fiscal Responsibility Commission, to improve accountability, efficiency in public financial management, so that people can see the result of all these efforts. Otherwise, this is a wasted effort. If you only solve for revenue without addressing, you know, how it's spent and addressing corruption. Freelancers that are working for NGOs, how should they be treated? So this one is like you're asking for tax advice, so you should get a tax consultant. But because you are here, so it depends on the contract you sign with the person. If you sign a contract with an individual to say, anytime we have events, you come and be our MC. Or we need you to manage our social media so they can see what we are posting. And you are paying the person a retainership. That's just a contract. You do withholding tax on them. If the person is employed as a staff, but a staff that is a temporary staff, then it means that what you are paying them, you can say, work for me 2 hours a day. Then what you are paying them is a salary. You do PAYE on it. So it's the nature of the contract you have with them that will determine how they will be taxed. And if they are doing it pro bono, nothing at all. The person say, I'm not charging you, I just want to help you, I like what you're doing. Once in a while, you say, you have been working so hard, take 100,000 naira honorarium. You won't deduct anything on that amount. Okay? That person is the one to report it when they're reporting their income tax. Depending on whether it makes them earn a lot more than exempt threshold, they may or may not pay tax on it. The next one is self-charging of VAT by NGOs. Yes, because the law creates exemption for certain activities of NGOs. The law does not exempt NGOs from paying VAT. So some people misunderstood it and said NGOs should not pay VAT. If you go and buy airtime now as NGO, won't you pay VAT? You pay now. But if you are doing a project to help displaced people, to help, you know, motherless babies, those are the ones we don't want to VAT. Because of the confusion, we now said, okay, you know what? You are liable to VAT. If VAT has not been charged, self-charge yourself. On your activities that you're not supposed to pay VAT, you get a refund back. Although I said to the FIS that I'm not very comfortable with this idea of paying and getting a refund. But they also had their own story of how the other method is not working. So let's see whether these are new reform where we are relying more on data and system will help us get to a point where the abuse is controlled without punishing everyone in the process. Next one is, when is implementation? And the person believed that when I went on channels, I said implementation is not 1st of January. So you definitely mix up a few things I said. The new tax reform law will commence 1st of January 2026. But certain provisions in the new laws, like the fuel surcharge, will not commence automatically on the 1st of January 2026. Because I remember at that interview, they were interested in the surcharge, and I had to explain it many times. So the comment about the law not commencing in January was with respect to the surcharge. Generally, the new laws will commence in January 2026. People who are paying a certain amount of rent will be exempted. You said we should make sure it goes viral. That's not what we said, though. We did not say that if you are paying 500,000 naira rent or less, you'll be exempted. We did not say that one. Thank you for asking. We said that You will not pay tax if you fall under the threshold for not paying tax. We explain how you move from your gross income or salary to taxable income, out of which the first 800,000 naira is 0%. We also said, regardless of the threshold of your minimum wage, you will not pay tax on minimum wage. We now said, anybody who pays rent can take 20% of the rent as a relief. Relief means amount on which you will not pay tax. But there's a cap of 500,000. If you go and pay 10 million naira as rent, your 20% is 2 million. We say we are sorry, we cannot give you 2 million because we also need to make sure this economy balance. Take only 500 and manage it. And that was why I explained that it wasn't meant for big people. It was meant for low-income earners. So please, my brother, we did not say that anybody paying rent of 500 or less will not pay tax because it depends. Then the last question says, is a company subject to any state tax? And how do we ensure that there is accountability? So if you're a company, you are subject to state tax, federal government tax, local government tax. Because as a company, you pay company income tax to the federation, collected by FRS. If that state says, my employees, you pay personal income tax, you pay employee personal income tax to that state. Business premises registration, paid. Local government says you are doing advert, paid. So there is no law that says if you're a company, you are not answerable to state. It's a federation, and this is done all over the world. So you pay the taxes that the law asks you to pay. So those are the questions. Thank you very much.
There was a second round of question and answer.
My question, two questions. If the plan in future is to use NIN and CAC number, why are we not doing it today? Why are we putting that off for a later date? The second question is related to tax audit. Is there plans to integrate the use of beneficial ownership information in tax audit in order to ensure that those who own companies are paying the appropriate amount?
I just needed to raise a concern. When the chairman was speaking, he spoke about how that we are currently doing the phase that concerns how that people pay tax, and there is need for the public to hear about it. But when the question for accountability came in, you said that you needed to make reservations on that so that the people who signs your law should, something like that, so that they can sign your law in case that part that concerns spending comes. For us, from the Civil Society Organization, it is a concern for us because as much as you talk about how that taxes should be collected, there should be the point where you need to talk about how spendings should also be spoken about, and that is also a concern.
So I just wanted a clarification about the banking and tax ID concerns. You mentioned that the tax ID has always been there since 2019 and is for businesses and income earning accounts. I just want to clarify if you regard salary accounts as income earning accounts. So if that's the case, is BVN sufficient as a tax ID, or to all salary earners that salary account need to link their account, with tax with 18? Then secondly, I've been hearing about integration of electronic invoice, and there has not been really much discussion about it with regards to how does it affect NGOs. Are NGOs expected to integrate their finance system with the electronic invoice? And if that is the case, because NGOs are not involved in buying and selling, so are we required to do that, or what businesses are required to integrate their finance?
Okay, so my question is, previously in the past, like weeks ago, the chairperson previously said that sex workers will be taxed. and I'd like some clarity as to what that means in practice and how such a taxation process will be implemented. And then secondly, what is the plan for government and tax authorities to collaborate more closely with banks and financial institutions to better define and monitor taxable transactions, particularly in the informal or digital economy?
My question is on the tax clearance certificate. Currently, I know the chairman said that it has been removed for a lot of categories for individual tax, but currently, if you are perhaps in Lagos State, you need to work there for at least 3 years before you can get a TCC. And then, let's say you work for less than 3 years, you move to another state, you need to work for another 3 years again before you get a clearance certificate. So, does the new tax law maybe harmonize that system where you can get a TCC irrespective of how long you've worked in that state? I hope my question is clear.
Great questions, as always. So the use of NIN and CAC, why don't we just do it now? Great question. The system is not 100% ready. So we're still building it. So you will know when it's ready because they'll be asking you for NIN for everything instead of TIN. Whether you want to register a car, whether you want to travel abroad. So that system is being developed. Any plans to use beneficial ownership for tax? Yes. These are some of the things we won't say out. Next one is banking and tax ID. Is salary income earners account considered to be income account? The answer is yes. In fact, if you're a salary earner and you don't have a TIN, you should be worried because it means they are not remitting your PAYE. So as part of remitting PAYE, every salary earner would already have a TIN. And the other thing you ask is BVN sufficient? When we are done with the system, it will be sufficient because BVN is linked to NIN, and NIN is your tax ID. But we are not there yet. So if somebody has only BVN today, of course, without it, they won't have a bank account, right? And they use the bank account for business without TIN, then the BVN is not sufficient. They still need to go and get TIN. When we are done with the harmonization, somebody will tell them, your new number is, then that's when we have harmonized. Are NGOs meant to integrate with this fiscalization business? There may come a time when NGOs will have to integrate, but as of today, the answer is no. Because that integration is done by annual turnover threshold. Currently, we're at 5 million and above. If you are generating 5 million and above from your business, integrate. You know, NGOs, if they have 5 billion, it's because somebody gave them money to go and spend to do NGO business. It's not because they issue an invoice, right? So, while I don't want to rule it out, because you may get to a point where you just need the data, not like you want them to pay tax. In the US, for example, NGOs have a lot of exemption, but they have plenty of responsibilities. You must file this, do account, fill this. Because there's also the need for you to be responsible when you get some privileges. Otherwise, people would abuse those things easily. How would government, okay, so the one on sex workers, taxation, how is it going to be done in practice? And the point is that under the tax law, not just the new one, even the existing ones, not only in Nigeria, but globally. In the US, there was a judgment in 1927. The tax law does not care whether your income is moral or is immoral, or whether it is legal or whether it's illegal. The tax law does not care. In fact, I should say the tax law is even more interested because it's another avenue to discourage you from doing those things. If you allow you not to pay tax, we're giving you an incentive to keep doing it. The US IRS, if you go to their website now, they have a guideline that says if you steal properties or anything or any assets, you must disclose it for tax purposes. I'm not joking, no. And it says, unless you have returned the item that you stole in the same year you stole it, you must declare the market value when you are filing your returns. As in, I so much love it. Is everybody disclosing it? No. But the day they find you, it's harder to prove that you stole an asset. It is so easy to prove that you did not pay tax on it. When I see an asset with you, cash, property, I ask one question: is it your asset? You know you stole it, oh? You will say yes, isn't it? Because if you say no, we just take it from you and move on. You will say it is your asset. And we can spend 10 years trying to find out whether you stole it or not. But I can immediately establish that you haven't paid tax on it. And collect the tax first. If possible, put you in jail while we figure out whether you stole the money or not. It's another way that government ensures that you do not benefit from stealing. Because when I collect the tax from you, if we now find out that you stole it, we'll still collect 100% of what you stole, even though you already paid tax. Are you following me? So if somebody stole 100 naira worth of assets, we made them pay tax of 25. Later on, we still recover the 100 from them. So if they say don't sell things in traffic, there's a law against it in Lagos. Don't sell in traffic. And me, I sell in traffic. I make money. Another person rented a shop, mom and pop shop, they are selling water. Are you saying we should not tax the person selling on the street just because the money is illegal? If you hire a taxi and they say, oh, I'm going to miss my flight, the guy says, instead of 10,000, give me 20,000, I'll take one way. I'm taking a risk because of you. And one way, pim, to the airport. Do you know that money is illegal money they've earned? Should we exempt them? Of course not. So, in conclusion, your source of income does not matter to the tax law. Moral sources, pay tax. Immoral sources, pay tax. Legal sources, pay tax. Illegal sources, pay tax. I'm writing an article on it because I think it's an opportunity for education. When something like this is of interest to the country, just ride on that opportunity to create more awareness. So I'm writing an article I should finalize in the next couple of days. Then there's three more. How will government collaborate with banks? So we're already doing that. We're not just collaborating with banks, we are collaborating with everybody where there's an economic activity. Investment account, asset manager, pension, vehicle registration, registration for electricity to connect to your house, any imports, any economic activity. This is why it will be hard to hide. Any economic activity that you do, we are collecting the data. We identify more than 40 institutions and data points that will be feeding the system with data. So just do the right thing. Are we going to develop citizen-friendly version of the new tax laws? Yes. Our plan is to be able to do versions in local languages and also to do the ones that can talk to you. So if you can't read and you can't write, it doesn't matter whether we put it in Hausa, you still cannot read, isn't it? But you can hear. So for the people with disability community, we're also working on that. So some of these things are work in progress. Then finally, tax clearance certificates. You need to work for 3 years to get it. You work for some years in one stage, you move to another one. How do we resolve this matter? Do you know you're actually not supposed to work for 3 years to get tax clearance certificates? It's the tax officers, some of them conveniently have the wrong interpretation of the law. Some of them actually out of ignorance don't understand what the law says. The law says, when I give you a tax clearance certificate, I should indicate if you have paid taxes and what you paid for the past 3 years. If I just got a job today, and next year I need tax clearance certificate, the taxman should give me the tax clearance certificate, stating the tax I paid last year, and saying the previous year, income nil, tax nil, nil. The previous year, nil, nil, nil. It will still show 3 years. It does not mean I must have paid tax for 3 years. That's supposed to be common sense. But since we know common sense is not very common, so some of these things we are writing in the regulations. We are working with the Joint Revenue Board with detailed regulation. We're also working on something we call an operational manual so that they can use for the officers. Because we can see all these nice things we are explaining now, and somebody is in one village in Jalingo, tax officer, he's not even aware that there's a new tax reform. Somebody is somewhere in Ondo State, my state, or something. Those things will happen. Nigeria is a massive country. So sometimes their own law book, tax law, is their Oga there. Oga, what should I do? Oga to himself. He inherited it from previous Oga who was confused. But if we do an operational manual, everybody can access it. So some of these issues will be addressed. So therefore, whether you have spent up to 3 years or not in one state, whether you move from one state to the other, you should not have to do 3 years before you get the tax clearance. So these are some of the problems that the new tax ID and harmonization we're doing will solve, so that everybody can access the information and you can be treated as one person with rights and responsibility that cuts across the whole country. So thank you very much. Those are the last set of questions.
Again, we ask, are you better informed? Have old misconceptions been cleared? Are you now equipped to play your role as a good taxpayer in the new dispensation? We have followed the Oyedele Committee from Lagos to Abuja. Where next? Stay with us, as this is your home for information and education on taxation.